council meeting. People in the gallery, people at home listening online, and members. Just a few little bits of housekeeping, the usual things, just for people to be aware. The nearest fire escape is through the door onto the left, and people in the gallery, we're not expecting a fire escape tonight, a fire alarm tonight, but if the alarm should go off, the fire escape is to the left. And we will be meeting outside just opposite the police station on this side of the road. Please don't use the lifts unless absolutely necessary if the alarm goes off. If you've got a mobile phone, could you now please switch it to silent or switch it off? And just to remind people that this meeting is being recorded this evening. And so to apologies. So we've had a few apologies tonight, and there's quite a lot of people that are not a little bit under the weather, one might say. So we've got Councillor Brodie, John Medland, Councillor Mosdale, Councillor Redrup and Councillor Redrup who are not able to attend. Councillor Ian Stevens is not here either. And any others? Councillor Brady?
Yeah, Councillor Quirk and Councillor Ellis are both unwell as well.
Two more. So a little bit thin on the grounds tonight. And yourself, sir, Councillor?
Yes, Councillor Price will be running late as normal.
Thank you. We make any comment about that one? Obviously, Councillor Brodie is still not back from his operations. So let us move on to the business of the meeting. So the first thing to do is to approve the minutes of the 17th of July. And very much, Councillor.
Sorry, apologies. Correction on apologies from that. It should actually reference which Redrup wasn't here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or corrections, Councillor?
On item 13, the declarations of interest, it should read, Councillors Jarman and Paul Fuller each declared a non-pecuniary interest in minute number 17A Youth Justice Plan as they were Isle of Wight magistrate. Incorrectly assigns me to the youth bench, although we'll pass to get onto one day, not currently.
So just a minor correction there. Any other accuracy? No, thank you. So to move on. And so would somebody like to second that, please? Councillor Brading. All in support. Thank you. Okay, so declarations of interest. Does anybody want to declare anything this evening? No, thank you. I just didn't say welcome to our youth Parliament candidates and youth councillors. Thank you for attending this evening. It's very much appreciated. And so we now move on to public questions. So I can see that we've got here 2 written questions so far. From Mr. Giddins, and we'll take that one, and one from Naomi Helm and Finlay Diffie from the Youth Council. We'll take that in a second, but we'll take the first one. Yeah. Mr. Giddins, would you like to address this? So if I could just ask you to keep it as short as you can, please, but to the point.
It's been shortened as much as I can possibly do it, and it's not very long. My question is simply, back in February this year, I asked a question of this council about the overflowing of the brook that runs along the footpath from Brook Road, entering a culvert just before Collingwood Road in Shanklin. I asked that as a written question on that occasion, and this question was not, in my opinion, answered. So I ask again, when will the work to rectify it, when will the When will the work to rectify it be started? And why has nothing been done to support those most affected by this ongoing unresolved problem? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Giddings, and I invite the leader.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr Giddings. I'll read out the written reply as it's a written question, and we'll provide the written reply, but I'll read it out for the benefit of the people in the chamber and in the public gallery, Mr Giddings. So the local authority can confirm that work is ongoing to fully understand the cause of the flooding incidents at Collingwood Road and what the best solution should be. The investigative work undertaken to date suggests that there is a blockage in the culvert to the north towards Carter Avenue, which is restricting the flow of water, particularly during periods of heavy rainfall, meaning that the water builds up in and around the footpath, that's SS 15 and Collingwood Road. The blockage is believed to be the main contributory factor resulting in the issues experienced in that area. And it is also linked to the sinkhole in the private parking area off Carter Road. We fully appreciate the impacts of flooding in this area is impacting residents and the wider community, and the importance of resolving this matter as quickly as possible. And that goes for all areas that have flooded across this island. It is an importance that we place on finding solutions to complicated issues. We are in correspondence with the landowner responsible for the culvert where the blockage is located to rectify the situation as swiftly as possible. The local authority does have powers under Section 25 of the Land Drainage Act to require works for maintaining flow of watercourses, and this could result in enforcement action being taken if the situation is not resolved. However, due to legal processes that need to be followed, the authority is unable to confirm exactly when the matter will be resolved. As well as this action, there is ongoing monitoring in relation to the safety of residents directly affected by the flooding in Collingwood Road, and the safety of the highway users and the safety of the buildings in close proximity to the sinkhole. As this is a live enforcement case, we cannot give more details at this point in time, but we will provide updates where we can to the local ward councillors and to the town council. And that's the written reply, Mr Giddings, that we will provide to you and make public after this meeting.
Thank you very much. And now moving on to our youth council representatives. Would you like to read out your question?
What concrete steps will the council take? What concrete steps will the council take to create more opportunities like affordable housing, diverse job prospects, or better transportation that could encourage young people to build their futures on the Isle of Wight?
So, thank you very much for your question. It's always good to hear young people's questions. It's quite a lengthy response here, but Councillor Jones-Evans is going to just very briefly respond to that.
Thank you, Chair. And again, thank you for writing in and being taking the trouble to ask your question in public here. It's very important that we hear the voice of our young people. I'm just quickly giving some sort of scene setting for this. The majority of the work that I oversee, regeneration, the economy, developing the economy, isn't actually a statutory part of the work that councils have to do. I just wanted to say, but some of the statutory stuff was mainly adult social care and children's social care that we do. The children's services is extremely important, and of course we have the new education strategy which is in draft, so I'd really encourage all young people and parents and everyone on the island to feed into that draft, and that's the work that's been overseen by Councillor Bacon and the team. Of course, having a good education is an absolute fundamental building block for having a successful future. Two of the things I will mention that aren't in this answer, the Medina Studios, the film studio, is going to be going to planning committee next week, and if successful, that will be providing some diverse jobs that are very interesting, enable travel and enable a good level of wage and skills. And secondly, we're also looking at providing some student accommodation to enable young people to come and study here. You can do some very good university level courses and other vocational courses on the island. So I just wanted to sort of just put that as a bit of a preamble. This is our response here. You will get it you will get it sent to you as well, because a lot to take in, and then you can share it obviously with the rest of the council. Affordable housing. The Isle of Wight Council is committed to ensuring that everyone has access to affordable, good quality accommodation. This is not without its challenges due to the lack of housing supply on the island. The council is proactively working with private developers providers to identify how the current shortage of affordable housing can be addressed. This includes the following: planning. The local planning authority supports the delivery housing in two main ways: determining planning permission and through the policies and land allocations for housing in its local plan. Policy compliant applications will provide at least 35% affordable housing, currently usually provided at a 20% discount on market rent or sale. So the larger the site, the greater number of affordable homes. In order to facilitate a supply of affordable and or specialist housing, the planning authority is dependent upon private developers, landowners to submit planning applications. An up-to-date local plan with housing allocations can help give certainty to developers and investors over progressing sites, as does consistency of decision-making from the planning authority, and that's both decisions from officers and the planning committee. Whilst the national picture is changing, the Island Planning Strategy has just finished its last consultation on the draft and is planning to submit it for examination in the autumn. And they've got a link there to the latest position for you to look at. Property. The council are working closely together and talking to property developers to look at innovative ways to develop its surplus land. The council can provide information on current demand and capacity for housing on the Isle of Wight to form a starting point for conversations about future solutions could look like, and also provide investors, developers and those with surplus accommodation with information to help shape their decision making. The aim is to maximise the use of existing and new housing stock and to develop a meaningful range of housing options on the Isle of Wight. The council is looking how it can provide information on current demand and capacity for housing on the Isle of Wight to form a starting point for conversations about what future solutions could look like, and also provide investors, developers and those with surplus accommodation with information to help shape their decision making. The aim is to maximise the use of existing and new housing stock and to develop a meaningful range of housing options on the Isle of Wight. Housing Register. Island Home Finder is the local housing register. This provides access to affordable rented housing on the island. The system enables young people to register their interest and provides details of properties that are to rent. Transportation. In the coming months, the council will be going out to consultation on the draft local transport plan 4. This will act as the council's 15-year strategic plan to improve transport for all island residents and visitors, including young people. Alongside this will be the updated bus service improvement plan, which specifically sets out the council's proposed improvements for local bus services. Again, this will feature proposals for the benefit of young people. In the shorter term, the council has already utilised the Department of Transport's bus service improvement plan, phase 2 funding, to enhance 3 local bus services. This will benefit many residents and young people who live in some of the more remote communities in the south and west of the island. In respect of the health and well-being of young people who rely on public transport, the council has been successful in securing Department of Transport funding for 22 electric buses, which are due to go into operation spring 2026. The council has also invested in improving cycling and walking routes, so they are of better condition to encourage all year round active travel, alongside the recently relaunched public e-scooter and e-bike share scheme. Job prospects.
Councillor, can I
Yes.
just ask you just to summarise, please, rather than having...
I'll try. There's been a lot of work on to put this together.
I understand that, but we've only got so much time. So you could just try and summarise it.
So we've got Island Futures that deliver the strands of work of careers, education, information, advice, and especially look at the needs of our young people not in education, employment or training. That's through the Education Participation Service. We are working with the Skills for Work programme that's funded by our UK Share Prosperity, and that's provided with working with Sovereign Network work and Southern Housing with one-to-one coaching. We also work closely with Portsmouth Southampton, delivering the Universal Support Programme on the island. The Youth Hub, which just been opened up in Pyle Street in Newport, and that gives direct routes to job market for people who may be struggling with one-to-one support. We've got the Skills Boot Camp programme that's been operating throughout 2024 and is used to close the skills gap. This has been working across the Solent area and on the island. And the Solent Careers Hub that was launched on the 1st September, and that's a partnership with the 3 authorities I just mentioned. And there'll be a launch event on the 10th of October. So that's a run through that last bit. I do apologise. A lot of work goes into. I do think it's worthwhile, you know, giving it a hear. I think a lot of members will have learned a lot this evening as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just we need to press on. Do we have any questions registered? We don't have any questions registered from the gallery, so that we've got a few minutes. So as long as it's a very brief question, sir, could you stand up and tell us your name and press the button, please? If you stand by the microphone, sir.
Light, is it? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right, it's short. Leaked CO2 has killed unknown numbers of people, caused lifelong brain damage and sickness requiring hospitalisation. Why would any councillor not prioritise threats to the life of one person? The proposed ExxonMobil pipeline is a direct threat to these risks for whole communities. Thank you.
And your question?
That's my question.
Specifically prioritise.
Thank you.
So it's actually on the agenda tonight, and there's an motion to that event, so it's going to be debated a little bit later on. So hopefully your question will be answered within that motion that's coming later from Councillor Stewart. So thank you for your question, and we'll endeavour to answer some of that during that particular session. Okay.
I'm hoping he'll modify the proposal or you do it for him. Thank you.
No, that's not for me to do, but thank you for your question.
Sorry, the whole council.
Sorry, so it now comes on to item 4, Chairman's announcements. You've all obviously had my report. There's just one little thing that I would really like to add in and make just a little bit of a fuss over is the air ambulance. And I recently visited the air ambulance. The air ambulance is a life-saving lifeline for this island, and it's incredibly important. And I just want to draw your attention to Operation Airbase, and that is that they are intending to move their operations currently located at Thruxton to Southampton Airport in the near future. And I'm asking councillors if you could push out their messages, push out their PR, push out the message of this will actually improve the response time to the island, remembering that this is not a scoop and rush to the hospital service. This is about the air ambulance taking a medical room technically to where the people are that have been injured or hurt. And so I just really want to stress how important that is for our island, particularly when our island can be cut off and we hear things about the Coast Guard helicopter no longer being able to land at the hospital. So it's an important lifeline for the people, and so the more that anybody can do to push that message, to help us raise funds or to help them raise funds, the better. And I just refer you to a report for other things. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions on that? Nope. Okay, so we now move to the leader's report, and just to remind you that questions to the leader are about his report. You now have 5 minutes, Councillor Jordan, in order to express yourself and your report.
Thank you, Chair. Well, okay, I won't take up all that time because there are a number of items on this report. Very briefly, we're up for awarding our adult social care. Trading standards have saved this council in terms of their activities and actions approaching £500,000, particularly through one particular successful confiscation of property. We have launched a rural fund. Details are there, £250,000, £250,000 on behalf of the government Rural Prosperity Fund. What I would like to just address, there are 3 key issues which I begin my report with. First is cross-solent travel. Second is ExxonMobil, and the third is devolved powers. So if I just may speak about cross-solent travel, because a little later there's a motion coming on. I know it's been amended and combined, but to say that everything that comes forward tonight in that motion, this council and I am doing, have been doing for quite a long time, and through varying different strands of work, including with our 2 MPs, we are approaching government on the ferry situation. I'm sure Richard and Joe could speak later about that, but that's one aspect. A second aspect of it is, which I'll come on to in the devolved powers, is that whilst there are no details from government yet about any devolved power arrangements, I've made it very clear to my comparative leaders in the Solent area that if transport powers were part of a devolved deal, those powers on transport must include the ferries. And that's been agreed on their part, that they understand and accept the significance of the ferries to this island. Away from that, I work with small groups of transport professionals and have done for a long while in looking at other approaches. I notice our former MP Andrews in the public chamber, who many, many years ago brought forward which is now the CMA, and those things are being looked at again on the ferries. Finally, a broad distance, I'm very aware of the White Link user group, who are quite active, as you may or may not know about from RIDE, on the White Link services and on services generally. And then finally, very recently I met with the Chief Exec of Red Funnel, and today I met with the new Chief Exec of White Link. And as you may imagine, the possibility to meet with him in a round table is on the table, and that will follow this meeting tonight and be arranged shortly. So all of the things that we're asking to do, and we all understand why we're asking to do them, we are doing and have been doing for a long time. I'll go on to ExxonMobil. Councillor Laura PC Wilcox, Councillor Stevens and myself met with the Exxon team some 2 months ago. We are meeting with them again shortly to understand their positioning on if this scheme goes forward, this project goes forward, and it would be government that decide that, how they see the benefit to the island in that. So once we've heard from them a second time, we will be producing a position statement of this authority with the assistance of all of you if you wish to input that, to put forward that position statement. And finally, the devolved power. Well, I, along with all other leaders in this country, received a letter from the Deputy Prime Minister inviting us to ask to speak with government about devolved powers for the region. We responded to that and put in an expression of interest as a fact-finding, asking government what's on offer, and if there were other arrangements and funding, we would want to know about them. So they're the three key things. Thank you for your indulgence, Chair, in overrunning.
That's okay. You brought that to a nice conclusion, which I think we all appreciate. And questions. So we have two questions to start with. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. Does the leader agree that all matters relating to potential devolution discussions, including meetings and preparations with other authorities, should first be reviewed and decided by full council rather than unilateral actions of themselves, cabinet, or even the alliance, so that all 39 members are able to represent the views of their electorate on this critical topic? Thank you.
So if and when we have a response from government and that response becomes negotiations, the full council will be involved. At this stage, it's fact-finding and responding to a letter to the leader of the council, that's me, and from which, in my authority as a leader, I responded to. I don't think I need to say much more than that. That's all we are. We're fact-finding, we're asking government, nothing to decide, nothing's been decided. There's nothing to decide because there are no details.
Supplementary, if I may, the question was not about what had happened so far. It was a question of what would happen in the future. So I was asking for the leader's agreement to future actions.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman.
I
You want
thought,
to take that out?
well, I thought I mentioned that, but I'll repeat it, Chair, if I may. Any future decisions on devolution would involve this full council.
Thank you. And thank you for your question, Councillor Jarman. Councillor, Wigley.
The question at the end, but just on Exxon, I am totally against the plan. I have written to Ed Miliband's team, and also I am in regular contact with the new chair of the Net Zero Committee, Bill Esterson, and I've made it very clear it will be something that I am totally 100% against. Do you want me to continue on that track? And then the second one, you can answer them both together, is I spent the last 12 months with what was and is now the Department of Transport working on the ferry issue. The disappointing thing is they had no idea what a problem ferries were previously. The issues we have with their private businesses, we need to use all the tools we can, but the government is open to change. The Minister is working on solutions. I have a message from him here. And I realise that it falls to me as the MP in government, but Joe supporting me has been very useful. So I thank Councillor and MP Joe Robertson for his support on what we want to achieve on ferries. Do you want us both to continue on that track?
Richard, yes, please. Let's do it.
Do we have any more questions? Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I welcome the leader's response to Councillor Jarman in terms of the ongoing engagement with groups. I perfectly understand that a leader has to be nimble in these matters and can't keep waiting for full council cycles to come round in order to respond to government, particularly when it's important to get civil servant engagement on these matters. Particular question is, can the leader confirm that in any discussions that he will be having, that he is not going to allow government to conflate devolution with the issue of what was called an island deal, but I still think of as being fair funding for the island? Will he confirm he will endeavour to keep that issue separate and alive and a priority for his work as leader of the council and on behalf of us all?
Thank you. Absolutely. And we are will be approaching before the autumn statement government with our fair funding plea and our submission. That's to be finalised, but that will go in again. It may be the same submission, but there may be some tweaks to that. That is a standalone. Our position is very clear on that. This island needs fairer funding for all the reasons that we know, and we've already put to government and had some success in the sense that it was accepted that fair funding is needed for this island. Unfortunately, it didn't turn into the kind of fair funding that we were asking for. On the ferries, absolutely, there are no details. It's an expression of interest at the moment. The meetings I have had with my counterparts without detail, and there have been no detailed discussions, I have made it absolutely plain that if in any future arrangements where transport is involved, that the island would require the ferries to be in that transport devolved powers. So, and that's absolutely clear and absolutely separate. And the leaders of the Solent authorities have accepted and agreed with that.
Well, that's looking like the end of question time. This is anybody else? Yeah. Oh, last minute entry, Councillor Lilley.
Leader, you mentioned about the rural fund, and the thing that confuses me is the status of the island, because actually if you look in any documentation across England, the Isle of Wight is seen as a rural community. So is this fund for all businesses across the island, or do we have something on the island which I never knew existed, that we actually have pockets that are classed as rural economy and possibly the towns are not? I'm just very confused by that status, because when you actually look at documentation, the whole of the island is seen as a rural area. It gets very confusing.
Yeah, if it helps, we are looking at rural prosperity for rural communities. Whilst I accept that you may believe the entire island is a rural island, of course it isn't, because there are towns all across this island which we would not consider to be rural. Does that help, Michael?
Could the council make that very clear, what are classed as urban areas and what classed as rural? And I would sort of question that we're so close as an island that it's actually quite difficult to define, but that's never been totally defined on this island.
Thank you, Michael. Of course, it's government prosperity funding for rural communities, and as with all funding, it comes with certain terms and conditions that we have to meet. So it won't be, although it's a competitive bid. It's 250,000. Let's hope it makes a difference. But in the big scheme of things, it's not a huge sum of money when you start spreading it around numbers of rural businesses and rural communities. So we probably won't even get into worrying about if somebody's on the edge of a town or in a rural location. It will probably be allocated before that. But I don't, off the top of my head, I can't give you the surrounding terms and conditions by government on it, but we could let you have that if you want that, Michael. Or you could look it up on Google. I know you don't like it, so.
Thank you very much, councillors. I'm sure there's a definition of what rural is as well somewhere lurking around in the documents. Yes, one final question. Have we
Even
got
later question.
We've got a few.
Following on from Councillor Lilley's question, I've noticed on the penultimate sentence of the Rural Fund paragraph, the council has received a number of applications and has now awarded the grant to a number of businesses across the island. Will you be making, will you be publicising the businesses that have benefited and their locations?
Publishing, who gets awarded and how much, Councillor Spinkle?
Well, I don't know whether it's how much. I don't see any real opposition to how much. It is public money, and it does seem to me that there's a public interest in knowing who's got what.
Don't disagree. And, well, don't disagree. We'll make sure it's published insofar as we are able. No, well, insofar as we're able, in terms of, as you rightly said, it's public money. Can we publish the organisation with the sum of money they've got? If we're allowed to do that, we'll do that, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. That seems very clear, and that seems to be the end of questions. Thank you very much for asking your questions. Moving on to item 6, the report of the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Corporate Functions. Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take this item quite quickly, if I may, and refer full council to the recommendation that appears on page 23, namely that the council approve the revision of the Corporate Parenting Board terms of reference, and then a little bit of narrative after that. We need to have those terms of reference approved by this body, so the newly constituted board or the newly created board, it's still to be constituted, can come into being and start operating. I'm sure members will have looked through the paper and the draft attached there. I should direct you on your tables, you should find a slightly amended version of the terms of reference. There was an initial meeting of the current form of the board last Wednesday, unfortunately too late for the papers included in the main bundle, but a few revisions, minor revisions, did take place at that meeting, essentially most of those taking account of the fact that we moved to a committee system next year. You'll note that in the sort of membership and chairmanship sections, I think section 6, 5 and 6 later in the document. But rather than going through what the Corporate Parenting Board is and so on, I trust members will have read that. But of course, what we are trying to do with our newly constituted Isle of Wight based children's services is to do that function as well as we can for our children in care. And I think the mindset is best set out in paragraph 1(2) of the proposed terms of reference. Just as we would our own children, we will prioritise their needs, that's the needs of children in care, and create the right conditions for them to thrive and have happy and fulfilling lives, as if this were my child. That really, I couldn't put it any better myself. That's what the board is there for. We are all corporate parents. We do have that role, and that expresses what we need to do as part of that role. Chair, I'm seeking at this point merely to put forward recommendation 2. Members will note we have the next item on our agenda is about appointments to the committees, various committees. And again, there's a slightly updated paper, and that includes the need to formally, by that mechanism, appoint members to the Corporate Parenting Board. So I'm not going to advance that we do that as part of terms of reference paper, and nor am I going to advance at this stage the appointment of a vice chair, because I think we need to get the membership sorted first, and then we can come back at a later date to consider vice chair. So I may have something to say about the Corporate Parenting Board membership when we get to item 7. Sorry to go around the houses a bit, but at this stage, I'm merely looking for a seconder for the approving the revised version of the Corporate Parenting Board terms of reference.
Councillor Andre. Seconded. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Bacon has eloquently summed up what I would want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I can see a hand gone up immediately to my right. Councillor Churchman, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I'm a little concerned, the membership, 5.1 of one of these sheets, I think the first one, not the amendments, but yes, 5.1 membership. It talks about 7 elected member appointments. Now, I can understand why you've got down 7 because you've actually designated 7 areas, for example, physical, mental health, participation and engagement. But I'm really wondering whether that is going to be it'll be unwieldy, and whether we will manage to acquire 7 people, thinking of the new committee system coming into force in May. I do query why we need 7, because that board will have quite a few people on it anyway. And just one other question, how many children do we have in care at the moment? I don't see a figure published anywhere.
So, Councillor Churchman, can we answer the first question
sorry.
in the next item, if that's okay? But, and just deal with the second one at this point. Would that be appropriate? And then we can deal with the committee.
If it's the second question, I'm going to look over the room to our Director of Children's Services, who maintains the figure day by day. I may be a couple of days out if I were to give it.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Can you? So, so the answer is 290 people. Okay, children. Sorry, well, little people. Same thing. Thank you very much for that.
And if I come to the question that was asked, the membership was discussed at length at the meeting I referred to last week with all the officers and relevant staff who are going to be part of the function of the Corporate Parenting Board going forward, and was also informed by best practice across the country. You'll note that we have revised the idea of membership, which was, as I'm sure you recall, Councillor Churchman, originally that de facto all members of the council were members of the board and free to turn up to every meeting. And I don't think it worked as well as it should have done. I think we can all accept that. So taking on board, as I say, best practice across the country, and indeed the experience of our new officer leading the care side of our children's services, it's decided that it's been proposed, I should say, that this is the best model to enable us to carry out that function that I read out a little earlier from the terms of reference. You will also note that the terms of reference are reviewable on an annual basis. So if we do find there's an issue going forward and the membership needs to be altered, whether up or down, or indeed the supporting officers and staff need to be altered, added to, or taken away from, that's something that can be regularly considered and added to the terms of reference, which will be an organic document so as we can make sure we perform our corporate parenting functions as well as we possibly can.
Yes, monitoring officer just wants to just briefly. I don't want to confuse the two issues because we've got obviously in item 7 monitoring officer's report, but very quickly.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is just to assist members. We're obviously talking about the Corporate Parenting Board and the terms of reference and the revised terms of reference which appear in the appendix. Just one quick point to tie up. At 5.8, it talks about the Vice Chair shall be appointed by the Annual Council. What I'm suggesting to follow on from what you've kindly said, Councillor Bacon, that suggests that there be an additional amendment there, that should there be any in-year vacancy, then such vacancy for Vice Chair shall be appointed at the next suitable full council. So you've got your flexibility, and it's consistent with what you've proposed earlier about that being dealt with once the full nominations have been put forward in relation to the appointments on the Corporate Parenting Board. Thank you.
And I'm very happy with that wording. I didn't manage to scribe it all down. I'm sure the monitoring officer has it though, and everyone's heard that. And I think it's a sensible addition to the document. Otherwise, to go back to my point that I put that forward for approval by this body.
So any more questions on this particular matter? It's looking like a no so far. Right to reply, you have the right to reply. Would you like to sum up?
I think I've said enough.
Response to that somewhere. Thank you very much. So I ask for a vote to affirm this. So all in favour, please. That looks like, yep, a majority. So thank you for that. We'll move on. We're moving on very rapidly tonight to item 7, the monitoring officer's report. Appointments to committees.
Thank you, Chair. If I just quickly update members, you're, I think, familiar with the format by now. Appendix 1 has been revised since publication, but it sets out the appointments to be made. And if it just assists those listening in tonight, there is a change to the Appeals Committee whereby Councillor Susie Ellis is being replaced by Councillor Paul Brading, and a substitute being added, Councillor Ian Ward. I think that covers the Appeals Committee element. The co-opted member, I should say, appointed to serve the nomination by IWALC at their annual meeting in, I think it was July, was that the co-opted member be Councillor Mick Lyons, being a non-voting co-opted member of the Appeals Committee, and that's relevant when codes of conduct investigations take place in relation to conduct of town, parish, community councillors. Corporate Scrutiny Committee, bear with me, please. We have again an IWALC nomination for appointment, and that's Simon Cook as a co-opted voting representative. And turning to licensing, change with Councillor Ellis coming off licensing and being replaced by Councillor Ed Blake. Planning Committee, we have another IWALC nomination, Cameron Palin as a non-voting representative. Corporate Parenting Board, we've heard that the nominations will be dealt with at the
Sorry to interrupt, but I think what we're doing here, following my earlier conversation with you, is formally appointing the names there. And also there is a name missing who previously put herself forward, and that's Councillor Andre. It doesn't appear on this version.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon and Chair. Yes, so I just quickly read out the additions, so you beat me to it. Councillor Bacon, Councillor Churchman, Councillor Andre, and Councillor Chris Jarman for the Empowering Islanders. It's politically proportionate, so it's 2 to the Alliance Group, which has been fulfilled. 3 nominations from the Conservatives. We've had 1 this evening. The Liberal Democrat Group will have 1 to vote.
I can assist you that with the name of Councillor Lilley for the Lib Dem Group. Thank you.
Thank you, that's most helpful. Thank you, Chair. So we've got Councillor Lilley to serve on the Corporate Parenting Board, and any remaining nominations, if not from the floor tonight, we can deal with it in November. And that's the Corporate Parenting Board. The Health and Wellbeing Board details, we've got another IWALC representative, Councillor John Graney, and the changes in the SACRA. We've got in Group B, Sarah Rowe added, and that's the information to the best of my knowledge, and it's set out in the revised appendix, plus the point which Councillor Bacon's mentioned, addition of Councillor Andre and Councillor Jarman, which has just been dealt with this evening. So I'd ask members to consider moving the recommendation as revised. And if I can ask if there's any further questions, please let me know, Chair. Thank you.
I think just before we go to Councillor Brady, we need a seconder on that. Somebody going to second that? So we've got a seconder. Councillor Lilley, thank you.
Just a technical question. Can I ask when the times of the meeting incorporated board will be? Because obviously we need to find members from our side. Could I ask what times that meeting is going to be and how often, please?
For the timings of the meetings.
Yes, so we can find nominations from our side. You know, what times of day they're going to be and how often.
Okay, we can send that on to you. Is that? Oh, okay.
I'm just double checking, but they're obviously designed at a time to be child friendly. So I believe it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The next meeting is the 13th of November and there are to be 6 meetings a year. I'm not sure if they're always going to be on Wednesdays. Possibly not, because they might clash with other things if they are.
So
they will always be early evening.
So a time scale hasn't been set for the other meetings at this point to be agreed by the meeting.
I believe we've just got the date for the next meeting and not the meetings thereafter. Obviously, we're only be working up to next April anyway, because we've got a new structure after that.
Okay, so I appreciate that, but if we could have the dates between now and April from your next meeting to be circulated, then people know. Yeah. 13th, yeah. 13th at 4 o'clock. Yeah, thank you. We've had that seconded. So do you want to say anything else, summing up? No? So can we then move to the vote, please? Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. So we're moving through this agenda very, very quickly tonight, which is quite positive. No, yeah, not wishing to jinx it. So we now move on to motions. A motion submitted under Part 4 of the Procedures Rule 9 of the Council Constitution. Excuse me. Councillor Lilley.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, I wish to call for an alteration to my motion. There is 2 motions on the agenda for ferries, and Councillor, one from myself and one from Councillor Blake. We've actually met and felt it was prudent to bring our 2 motions together, which we've agreed wording, which I presented and distributed to all members by email, but they do have a copy in front of them. But the process means that I have to call for an alteration, ask for a seconder to it. We have to have a vote that all members agree to the new wording.
That's correct, Councillor Lilley. So just to confirm that you're making an amendment to your original
Alteration. An
alteration to your.
Yeah.
And we need to confirm that by taking a vote on that to do that.
We'll have to have someone who seconded it.
Yes,
first.
right. Have you got a seconder? We've got a seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Blake. All those in favour of the alteration? And that looks like it's unanimous. You happy with that? Yep. Yep. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor, we're going to have to ask you to read the alteration because the people online don't know what we're talking about, and nor do the people in the gallery, which makes perfect sense. Thank you for that reminder.
Okay, so the 2 were quite substantial, so bring them together. So I apologise for the time of taking. The new wording of the motions states Ferries to and from the Isle of Wight provide a lifeline service essential to the economic and social well-being of the Isle of Wight. Residents rely on ferry services to commute to work, access healthcare, visit friends and family, and access other key services not available on the island. Key public services on the island, such as the police, fire and rescue, and the NHS, are reliant on mainland workers who commute over. Tourism, the local economy, biggest sector on which so many businesses and jobs depend, is entirely reliant on the ferries. In the last 2 decades, the ferries have got more expensive, less regular and less reliable. The proposal is for Isle of Wight Council notes that the new Labour government plans to introduce legislation with the purpose of improving integrated transport across the UK, including nationalising the railways and bringing buses under local control. 2, private ferry companies operate between and therefore connect rail and bus interchanges on the island and mainland with no alternative means of transport. 3, the private ferry companies have become laden with debt under various foreign ownership structures. And 4, every other major UK island population is served by UK ferries that benefit from intervention by government, e.g. Scottish Government subsidies for Scottish ferries. Working with the Island 2 MPs, the Council will resolve to A, call urgent meetings with Red Funnel and Whiteling to discuss dissatisfaction with current services and concerns about reliability in the winter months of 2024-25, especially for passengers travelling for hospital appointments as well as the long-term future. And will resolve to call on the government to B, acknowledge that Solent ferries are a vital part of the UK's integrated transport network. C, acknowledge that entirely private and unregulated Solent ferries are no longer appropriate, particularly in view of the government's plans for rail and buses. And D, make legislative provision to bring ferries under democratic control in line with its strategic vision on trains and buses, including regulations for ticket prices, including options for caps on cost of travel, timetables and service reliability.
Thank you, Councillor Lilley. Would you like to speak to that now?
Yes, I would.
And then,
sorry,
and then I know you've just read out the question, but would you like to speak to that? And then obviously coming to Councillor Blake after that.
Well, firstly, I would like to acknowledge that we're in a unique situation tonight. For the first time ever, this council has 2 councillors who are elected as MPs, which actually are both within the new Labour government and also the opposition, the Conservatives. And I think the reason I put this forward, and I think also Councillor Blake, is we felt that it was an opportune time with those new members for this group of councillors, right, the whole council, to debate this issue. I totally acknowledge the leader of the council has been working hard on this issue, and I totally acknowledge working with the 2 MPs now. But we all represent wards that are actually experiencing. And this is the only means, the only place that we can have a dialogue and debate. And I felt, Ed and I felt that it was extremely important that the backbenchers like me had an opportunity to actually speak and for us to come to have a vote. We haven't actually had for a long time a vote about the ferries, and clearly give a message to our new MPs to take that feeling forward from this dialogue. So I don't want to go on really much further because I want my colleagues to express their views to our leader, to the Cabinet, to the Isle of Wight Council and to our 2 MPs. but also to the people who are watching and to this community and to the press, that this, to me, is an issue of total inequality. It's an inequality issue. It actually infringes Ireland's human rights. It's a human right issue. We have many children on this island that have never crossed that Solent. There are children in my ward that have never, living right, have never crossed the Solent. And when you ask their families why, they say, because we cannot afford the ferry prices. We are in a cost of living crisis. Wages on this island are on average £75 a week lower. But the ferry companies, particularly in the summer, put the fees up to an incredible level that actually it is stifling our tourism, but it is making those children I mentioned poor. We have some of the poorest wards in the whole of the South Coast and poverty, and the private ferry companies actually put a gun to our head. We need to actually really in the next 12 months to improve. And my last particular comment is about the health travel. If you have to go over on those ferries, right, and you find that 10 are cancelled in one day, you have had to that, and there were people from my ward that had to spend a night in a hotel, right, because there were only two ferries of Red Funnel that actually were not operating that day, which were the ferries that actually have the two places for cars for you to stay in the car. And if you've had an operation, you have to stay in your car for that. This is happening now, and I'm really fearful of what's going to happen in the winter. We need to negotiate with those operators now to improve their service and use a carrot and stick that if they don't actually start working with us really well and start improving their services, we're going to be much harder in our resolve to actually take their business away from them in the long term. I move you to please debate this and please support this motion. I will hand over to my colleague, Ed Blake, to second it.
Well, I've never. Yes, you do. I believe that Councillor Blake is going to defer to the end. Is that correct?
Yes, please, Chair. If I
Reserve
can.
the right to speak later.
If that's okay.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Quigley, I don't know if to call the councillor or member of Parliament.
That'll do. Councillor.
Councillor.
It's not very often you have to invite you to speak, Michael. So thank you. Thank you for beating the buzzer. I won't speak on behalf of Joe, but I don't think you'll get much argument from either of us. I think these are well-known issues. They've been known for a while now. The problem we have is they're private businesses. We refer to it politely as private equity, but what it is it's vulture capital and no more. We need to use every mechanism we can and all the tools we have in government, and that is what I'm working on daily. And I don't want to keep going on about it, but sitting with the relevant ministers, they are on our side. As I said, the disappointing thing is we're starting from scratch because they knew nothing about the ferries. And the barriers to opportunities are fair point. School trips aren't happening, NHS appointments are missed, but it is something that I work on daily. And when me and Joe meet and speak very nicely to each other for a cup of tea, it's the thing we discuss together. So again, I will thank Councillor Robertson for his support on this.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. The amount of times I bump into Councillor Quigley in Parliament, you'd imagine there are about 6 Island MPs, but there are only 2 of us. Unsurprisingly, I obviously support this motion. And I think it would be immensely helpful if, and I hope it will, this motion passes, because it assists both MPs and the council leader in the work we're doing to try and engage with government. If we have a resolution that the entire set of Isle of Wight councillors have backed, that's a really useful piece in the armoury to make the argument. I think there's a real opportunity here, and the opportunity won't last for that long, that we have a government that has a plan for, in its view, better integrated UK transport. And it has a fairly radical plan for rail nationalisation, whether you agree with it or not, the government will push that through. And it's got a radical plan for buses as well, which includes primary legislation to allow local authorities to run bus services. Trains are already subsidised. The UK taxpayer already subsidises every single train journey, whatever you're travelling on the train for. And it already subsidises bus journeys with the £2 bus fare. Ferries are a real outlier and seem to me a glaring gap in the current plan that government has. And I think there's an opportunity to go with government in their direction of travel and say, and please add ferries. It seems to me that that's so inevitable that we're not having to kick down doors and create a whole new set of arguments. We are going with where the government wants to go. We just want to add ferries to it. So I think this would be a really useful motion to help Richard, Phil and I, and it will help us build a case. So without any more words, please endorse it. Please vote for it.
So we've got several hands up now, but Councillor Bredin was next.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to start by saying it's really good to have our two MPs here this evening and to publicly say many congratulations to both of you. And, you know, I know that you all will do the best for the island as you've been elected to do so. I will obviously support this motion. I mean, Whitelink and Redfern have been mugging us off for years. I choose my words carefully. We've been mugged up. We have been mugged off by these two companies for so many years. Councillor Jordan in his report mentioned, you know, as his leader, he's been banging the drum on this. Councillor Stewart before the last 4 years has banged the drum on it. Andrew Turner started the process of challenging the ferry. Bob worked hard on this ferry companies for 4 years. I'm sure Joe and Richard will take this on. They'll get fed up eventually talking about this because it's all talk about these ferry companies. We as islanders, and I'm a resident, I want action. Nice that people are talking about these companies and talking about actions, but we're not getting any actions. Done all the best efforts of everyone concerned. Everyone's trying hard to solve this. We actually need something done because all the time they're mugging us off. We keep paying the fares to go across to the mainland and getting absolutely nowhere. I don't refer to them as a ferry service because they don't offer a service. They come up with all the excuses every day on Facebook and on social media, another excuse for not running a ferry. And it's just, you know, they must run out of excuses at some point. I know Carl and I have talked about this offline. You know, these excuses are pathetic. It's because they can. They don't care about a service for the island. I'll tell you a little story. I went to France for a holiday a couple of weeks ago. 6.5 hour crossing from Portsmouth to Caen. Left on time, arrived on time. I came back from Caen, left on time, arrived in Portsmouth exactly 6.5 hours later. Got on Whitelink, 40 minutes late. And plus an hour. And we set off from Whitelink, from Portsmouth. The captain was online. No apology for being late. He said, you'll notice that we are 18 minutes late. Well, that's 40 minutes late, not 18 minutes late. My watch just stopped. And he said, it's because of the traffic in the Solent. There's boats in the Solent. What a surprise. The Brittany Ferry didn't worry about these boats in the Solent. But Whitelink, that's another excuse off of their book of excuses. So they are a pathetic effort at a service. I don't refer to it as a service. And as much as I admire all the efforts, we need actions now, not continue getting mugged off by these two companies who they do hold us to ransom. We are locked on the island. We need medical cover, as Councillor Lilley quite rightly mentioned. There's an issue, but it's a bigger picture of everyone is spending so much time. But when I was on holiday, I met a Scottish couple sitting in a nice bar and he talked to a Scottish couple. They live on the Isle of Bute. The Isle of Bute has got 2 ferries, the mainland. They don't go as often as Whitelink, or they probably do now, but they don't go as often as regular. But These couples said, and he sails, so he's been to Cowes, he's been sailing. This couple said £45 is their maximum fare, capped, and they think that's extortionate. £45 is the maximum they can charge, and they think it's an extortionate amount of money, and we're paying God knows what.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Brady. Very valued points. Can I just try to just make sure that we cover as many different points as possible during the debate, if that's possible? Well, Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I was amused by Councillor Robertson's reference to the Isle of Wight having 6 MPs. The number of times he bumps into Councillor Quigley. You may recall that the island did have 6 MPs up until the 1832's Great Reform Act. In fact, my town of Newport had 2 in its own right. Wish with those halcyon days would return, we'd have even more voice within the House of Commons. But it's great to see both Richard and Joe working together on this vital issue, and long may it be so. It interested me actually about the price inflation that we have seen for crossing the Solent. You would expect over time, mature technologies, maturity of markets to see actually prices over time go down. There's the only one I can really think of otherwise where we've seen price inflation, which is really excessive, is in house prices, of course, over the last 30 years. So I was digging around on eBay. You can actually find somebody is selling a timetable for Isle of Wight crossings from 1967. The cost of crossing the Solent on a 3-month return for a vehicle was 2 and 6. Which is £2.50, I think. I was born in the era of pre-decimalisation, but I have no. Two and
12 and a half.
2006 shillings. I meant. Sorry. Yeah, not the pennies, the shillings and pence. Sorry. So there you go. I born pre-decimalisation, but don't understand it. What I do understand is that I can put that figure into the Bank of England's inflation calculator and discover that even if I allow for the additional charge of 4 shillings for a driver and the additional passengers, I'm still looking at a cost of around 65 to 70 quid. So when I was at Liberal Democrat Conference talking to representatives of Transport for South East, I challenged them to name what they thought would be a fair price return to the island. And one of them took me up on that challenge, and she felt that it would be about £50 return. And I think this is actually a question we should always put. What do you think it would be a fair price to cross the Solent, bearing in mind everything else? Of course, just looked up now, if I were to travel next week on a period return, the cheapest I found was around 95 quid. But that would be travelling at midnight, and the vast majority of us would be having to look at prices much more of 105 and more. At summertime, of course, things increase even more, and I'm not going to name which particular ferry company, but one is well known for inflating its prices, it seems on an hourly basis, or it seems like that. So I absolutely support this motion. I absolutely endorse the work that our councillors, who are also MPs, are doing right now. I hope that their voice is heard in Parliament. There is an opportunity. They clearly are grasping it, and I hope all of us can support that work tonight.
Councillor Garrett. Councillor Stewart, would you like to say? Oh, my apologies. Councillor Adams was next.
It's, with the greatest respect, I think we could speak about this all night. I'd like to request if we could move to the vote, because I'm aware that, I believe this is fully supported anyway, but I'm aware that one of our MPs has to depart shortly, and I would like some input on the next motion. So would we move to the vote?
Or to do so, I still have to give the Councillor Ian Ward. We do need to give one or two briefly, just briefly, if there's any different points. So I need to go first of all very briefly, if we can. I know you. Yeah.
I will keep this brief, Chair.
Sorry. We have had a seconder to move to the vote. Okay, so are you happy to
Point of
move
order,
to the?
Chair. I think Councillor Blake should have the right to,
Yes, he
as he
should.
seconded the motion, to
He
speak
should,
first.
yes.
I'm happy to move to the vote, but I like Councillor Blake, as it was Councillor Blake's original motion, to talk.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. I am going to go to Councillor Blake and then we'll go to the vote. So apologies to the others. I know that your points are really valuable. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be as quick as possible. Thank you to Councillor Lilley for allowing the merger on this motion. I think this we're all appreciative of the work that is going on, both within the council and at government level to MP level to further this. But I think there is been a real emphasis from the residents on this in the last year or so, particularly. Obviously, it's always been an issue, but in this last year, it seems to be exacerbated. So that is the added reason for myself bringing this motion forward. We have a duty to do what we can, where we may not have much teeth in terms of actual action. We have a duty to represent our residents' views, and I don't think you'll talk to a resident and not have this come up as an issue. So that was the reason for me bringing this motion forward. So I thank Councillor Lilley for the allowing the rewording and a merger of the motion, and I recommend that you all vote, which I'm sure you will, for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blake. And certainly as one of the ward councillors, because there are several of us that are affected who could spiel on forever about this. It's very much appreciated that this has been brought to this council by other councillors who are not necessarily in the wards of where they've got ferries, except the high speed. So shall we move to the vote then, please? Those in favour, please. And that looks unanimous to me. Thank you very much, Councillor. Now, what I'm proposing to do now is it's 20 past. I think we just ought to just take a couple of minutes for a comfort break before we move on to the next one. Certainly. Yeah. Well, some of us need a comfort break, I'm afraid. You know, some of us don't have the same movements as everybody else. So we are going to take a couple of minutes. Thank you, as quickly as possible. Thank you, everybody. And moving on to Councillor Stewart's motion. Councillor Stewart, would you like to introduce that, please?
Fellow councillors, you will all have read what I've written down. Of course, we all read everything in front of us all the time, but that's a different issue. I'm going to keep this short because it is clear that there is a lot of cross-party support. And I recognised this right at the beginning when I was standing beside Councillor Ward holding a sign saying, "Stop the pipeline at Chale Show." And I would also like to thank my fellow councillor, Councillor Critchson, who's worked really, really well and closely with me and done a lot more than I've done, who has spoken to the two MPs who've already made their opposition clear. I have a background in government. I understand this company. I understand what they're doing. I understand the technology. And I went along to the first meeting, stepped back, spent 2 weeks bringing myself up to speed, and realised just how appalling this whole thing is. Exxon chose deliberately to have their informal consultation over the summer with a low-key launch for councillors in July. In spite of their millions of pounds in project promotion, their technology of carbon capture is both unproven at scale, at cost, and in terms of the science as well. We have a campaign team already. They are meeting properly for the first time tomorrow. I would ask for your support for this motion, and I would ask for your support in this campaign to stop a motorway-sized scar being put across this island for no decent purpose other than to make ExxonMobil a lot more money and to leave the island bereft. They offer nothing to the island at the moment apart from something like 8 years of misery. I leave it to the rest of you to make a decision as to how they support this. And I would point out, sorry, Chair, I'm not supposed to talk until I've got a seconder, am I?
Go for a seconder in a second.
Okay. And I would like to seek a seconder for this motion in case some other councillor might agree with me, like Councillor Critchson.
And the speedy seconder comes rushing in. Councillor Critchson. Would you like to speak now?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair. Yes. I'd like to thank Councillor Stewart for bringing this motion forward because it was really important that it was on this council paper and that it was discussed in this public forum here because, like Councillor Stewart said, that it's been over the summer. We haven't had time to speak about it as a council, and I think it's quite important that as an Isle of Wight Council, we do have a statement on it, a public statement to say that, our objections against it. So I'd like to see that going forward from this motion, if it's passed, that we do come together as a council to do it. Councillor Stewart and I have been dealing with a lot of residents in our area ever since this proposal was put forward. And, it's quite disturbing. We came at it with quite an open mind, but looking at the viability of what they're proposing and the safety issues of it is super concerning for our residents, and we've got a lot to deal with them. So we would like the council's support on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we enter into the questions, and we've got Councillor Quigley.
Firstly, thank you to Councillor Stewart for putting in all the hard work. I think everybody needs a champion in times like this, and some things transcend politics, and slicing the island up for the benefit of a large multinational corporation is certainly one of the things. So thank you, Councillor Stewart. As he said, the technology isn't proven. I think the only bit of technology that's proven is the digger that will dig the trench. The rest isn't, and it's predicated entirely on keeping Forley competitive. The price per tonne of CO2 is due to jump to £130 a tonne by 2030, and I believe they emit something like 4,000 million tonnes or 4 million tonnes. I can't remember. It's a lot of money. It's about 500 million quid a year they'll be in the hole for. If the price of CO2 was dropped to £10 a tonne, you can guarantee they'd abandon this scheme. So that says it all, really. So it's not for any benefit for the island. I don't believe it's even benefit for the country or even the planet. So whilst I'm going to have to dash off in a minute, I fully support the motion. And again, I'll thank you for the work you're doing, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you very much. Do I see anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Vanessa Churchman.
I think my biggest problem with the whole thing is what it will do against our tourism product. That is the basis of our economy on the island is tourism. And I just can't imagine enormous diggers or whatever come across. Carving a route across the island would absolutely destroy the West White. I understand also that the pipe laying is not very deep, and there will be, for example, inspection trenches or inspection areas along the route of the pipeline, which means you can't really hide it. And as I said, it's all about Exxon making money at the end of the day. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Fuller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm in the unfortunate position that if Exxon decides to dig up the Isle of Wight, they're going to start from Gurnard. Again, when you look at the proposals for things like the station that is going to be on our seafront, on our heritage coast, it's absolutely appalling. The damage that they will do to our coastline and to our seas are, again, absolutely appalling. There was an opportunity for ExxonMobil to try to reassure residents. The more I've spoken to residents since the consultation, the more residents that have come to me and they've told me this is unacceptable. We want you to do something about it. I'm a member of 3 parish and town councils. All 3 of the town parish councils that I represent have all supported very, very strong opposition to these proposals. It's not acceptable. It's not wanted. And I see absolutely no benefit at all. There was an opportunity for ExxonMobil to offer benefits, but they did diddly squat concerning that. So I am totally opposed to this application, and I would hope that all members share that view with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. Likewise, I'm in tremendous opposition against this, and I've attended several meetings on this, including the one that was hosted only on Monday night this week. Thank you, Claire. In a packed hall where we were so packed, we actually had to relocate and carry chairs from everywhere in the river centre to the big hall to accommodate those, and we're still left with people at the back that were standing. It is unfortunate in this that the candour has not been apparent at the engagement meetings in this pseudo consultation phase. Many people who've engaged with those have come back terribly disappointed that they were unable to get straight answers to straight questions. That's very concerning. Some of the answers that were given at those meetings are simply, we don't know. It's not satisfactory at all. It's compounded in the West White, which is most severely affected by this, with a plethora of notices being plastered on gates, highways and byways and field posts by the operator or their agent, asking people to declare ownership of land because they themselves cannot find it on the land registry, simply because, of course, it's not there. And those notices and the attitude of people turning up to confront landowners demanding information, and I do use the word demanding because that's how it's been reported, is reprehensible. So I think this council needs to support this, but also to emphasise to the body who are conducting it that we are deplored by the attitude of their agents and by the lack of candour in their consultations. Thank you.
Councillor Blake, and then Councillor Jones-Evans, and then Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I have quite a unique perspective on this because I am one of the last remaining fishermen left on the island, and that is the area they want to come through on the other side of the island, to the south side, is a very delicate ecosystem made of tiny little sandbanks and little rocky outcrops that hold a hell of a lot of fish and things like that. And we've already seen that the aggregate dredging in that area has destroyed a hell of a lot of this area, to the point where you've had it's only small shingle banks removed, and then it's led to devastating effects on things like the kelp forest and things like that. Ventnor Haven used to fill up with kelp 20 years ago. We don't get it anymore. It just doesn't grow on the south side of the island. So tiny little things can and alterations to the seabed can have massive implications. So I have not received any consultation formally through to me as a member of as far as I'm aware, the only remaining member of the Isle of Wight Fishermen's Association. So they haven't done a full consultation as of yet, haven't even approached us. So I would like to raise the issue that, that not just on land, which of course would be devastating, but they'll have a huge consequences once it leaves the island and goes across the sea.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm as horrified as everyone else is on the island about this, especially given our biosphere status and all the wonderful work that's going on to enhance, our biodiversity. Think of all the seagrass work that's going on in Solent at the moment, which is, working with universities and oysters coming back, and all this richness that we've got here as an island. And yeah, if it seems at one fell stroke, it could all be completely put at risk. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's contacted me, because people have rung me up, even though we're in the centre of Newport and not going to be affected directly. Of course, it's everyone sees the island and how precious it is. So I just wanted to thank everyone who's been going to the meetings, everybody who's been writing, all the people that have been bothering to come out and protest and get involved with the consultation and letting people know what they are. And thank you to our two MPs also for voicing our concerns on behalf of the island. I was doing a bit of research, and if you go look in America, they have had some difficulties in there with some of the pipelines rupturing. So there is a real issue here with safety, as well as the initial impact of putting the pipes in. So that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to sort of give my encouragement to everybody, and let's stick together on this important issue.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself reinforcing the last point that Councillor Jones-Evans was making. When I went along to the exhibition at Victoria Recreation Ground, there was plenty about the processes and the apparent benefit in terms of reduction of CO2. And let's be honest, we do need to reduce CO2, but although big companies producing lots of CO2 could do a lot more by divesting themselves away from fossil fuels first, rather than digging enormous great trenches using unproven technology. But I think the thing that most struck me was there was nothing really discussing the risk. Councillor Jones-Evans has alluded to it. It was, and a resident of my ward has highlighted to me, for example, February 22nd, 2020 in Satatia, Mississippi, a pipeline rupture, then owned by Denbury Resources, now ExxonMobil, that hospitalized at least 45 people and caused more than 200 people to be evacuated. CO2 is a deadly gas, so above a certain concentration, 50% concentration is fatal to humans. Okay, it might, if a rupture were to occur and there was some diffusion out, and so reducing that sort of things, maybe humanity itself, humans nearby might not be so affected. But think also any organism that depends upon aerobic respiration to live will find itself utterly compromised. By compromised, I mean dead. That means everything from some tiny microbes all the way up to birds, to foxes, to red squirrels, everything else that makes up the amazing biodiversity that we have on this island. I have heard some people saying, well, they're just going to fill in the trench. So, and on another point, they'll fill the trench in and everything grows back. Do you remember that time a few years ago when it was so dry here across the country that aerial shots of the countryside showed up archaeological sites, hundreds, thousands of years old? When you scar the landscape like this, yes, it will grow back and superficially seem to have recovered, but it has not recovered. And that recovery is both long-term and fundamental. I was talking to Councillor Stewart with my limited knowledge of biomes, but even disturbing the fungal structure and the microbial structure of the soil will have an immensely damaging effect. So I think ExxonMobil need to come clean on the risks, recognise there is a already established record of things going wrong. And ultimately, I hope we'll see the pressure of the people of the Isle of Wight so that they will withdraw their application before they even pursue it with government.
And thank you very much, Councillor Garrett. Now, there's a number of other hands showing. I'm just wondering whether if there's anything in addition that you'd like to offer in consideration of the debates that we've had, because I'm fairly sure that I feel very confident about, as with the previous motion, where we're going with this. So if it's just a couple of quick points, we've got two more people.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief. So actually, Councillor Quigley said, actually, obviously, at the moment, it's cost effective because the price is very high. If it's ever started, the price suddenly dropped, it obviously wouldn't finish the project even, so we could have a half-finished pipeline across the island. I totally think this is absolutely wrong. I will support the motion. Just a bit of clarity, it says in the motion, put its immediate concerns and objections directed to the Secretary of State within 2 months of the motion. I guess that will be by letter. And if so, as this is not political at all, could all councillors see a copy of that letter go to Secretary of State, please?
That sounds quite reasonable. Quite reasonable request. Thank you. Councillor Spinks, I'm taking you as the last person in this.
Chair, I will be brief. I just want to say that as a ward councillor whose ward would be affected by this, and also as a resident of the area, I've spoken to a lot of people, and there is huge opposition in the West Wight, and I would hope opposition in the East Wight, although perhaps it doesn't directly affect them. It will affect the island, the beauty of the island, the safety of our residents, and I do hope that the East Wight will support this. So far, over 30,000 people have signed the petition against. That is a huge number, and it's rising. I haven't found out exactly how many there were. It was a couple of days ago that I found out it was 30,000, and it's still going up. So it seems to me, because benefit has been mentioned, I don't want to go over old ground about safety, etc., all of which is very important, but I can think of no benefit that could possibly be offered to the Isle of Wight that would justify this atrocious plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everybody's comment. To sum up, back to Councillor Stewart.
I cannot sum up what everybody else has said because it is your words and you have made some very important points. I can tell you that this is a long-term campaign. ExxonMobil will not give way easily because it's money for them. So I thank everybody for all of their interventions. I thank everybody for all of their efforts. I particularly thank the new MPs for helping and being involved in this. And I look forward to at least some success in saving our island from this particular problem.
So thank you very much for that. We're going to go now to the vote, and those in favour. The motion was read out earlier, so I've asked to go to the vote, so that's what we must do. Thank you. Please go to the vote. Those in favour. Thank you very much. Now then, moving on, we had earlier a motion by Councillor Lilley. So I now go to Councillor Ed Blake to ask, given the previous motion, what you would like to do, sir.
Despite the fact that if it could be repeated multiple times, it'd be of benefit. I think it'd be prudent to pull my motion. So, thank you.
So you're formally withdrawing your motion. Thank you very much for that clarification. Which brings us on to Councillor Drew. Last but not least.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will try to keep this brief. I will perhaps, with your indulgence, overlook the preamble to this motion, Chair, if you're happy, and just go to the substantive points, because I think we probably all here take it as read that a provision of NHS dentistry on the Isle of Wight is truly execrable. It has long continued, and something needs to be done. Now, this, I would suggest, notwithstanding, I have had some criticisms that is possibly something of a toothless motion, but actually I would argue that we need to take some sort of stand. And what I'm pressing for is for that to be endorsed by the council. I will certainly be liaising with the legal department, who I think would be very helpful, and it's irrespective of whether this motion passes, because I think there are ways of exerting pressure on the ICB that would be useful. So with that in mind, I will go to, as it were, the resolution of this motion, which is one, to formally recognise that NHS dental care provision within our community is grossly inadequate and entirely fails to meet the needs of our residents. Secondly, to hold the ICB accountable for that responsibility, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, not at great length, but with your indulgence, to hold them accountable in that responsibility in providing NHS dental services to an adequate standard for the islands. 3, to seek an urgent response from the ICB to address these deficiencies and provide a rapid and workable plan for improving access. And fourthly, and I think importantly, commit to taking legal action. Now, I've added the if necessary. I would say it is necessary, but I do think it is useful to flag that we need to take a more robust approach, because nothing really is getting done. To ensure that NHS dental care is provided on a meaningful, accessible basis for all residents. Exploring all available legal avenues to enforce the ICB's duty to provide adequate dental services. And then 5, to call on the government to review current NHS dental contract and funding mechanisms. So if I may, I'll take that last point first in terms of calling on the government. Now, I'm aware that the Health and Social Care Act 2022 has changed the way in which ICBs and their precursors are offering contracts. The difficulty is that the contracts for individual units of dental work are, at the moment, not sufficient to entice dentists to the islands. That is going up slightly, but not enough. So this essentially is a modest proposal. It's a cost-neutral proposal, notwithstanding the fact that I think we need to be as it were, girding our loins for a potential legal battle. And it sort of goes to the point that Councillor Lilley made in relation to the berries and that Councillor Blake made as well in terms of equality. This is an equality issue that ultimately equality is not treating someone the same. It is ensuring that you have the same outcome. And we are a landlocked area where it is particularly difficult to get access in the way that some of our friends and family can on the mainland. If you need to, you can easily go, not easily, but you can certainly potentially drive and find another dental surgery. You cannot do that easily on the island. This really comes down to responsibility. It's the ICB's responsibility. That is enshrined in primary and secondary legislation. And I suggest that they have responsibilities under the Equality Act to ensure that island residents are dealt with and given the same outcomes as those on the mainland. Now, we know that there is something in the order of a 12 million surplus in the Hampshire and Isle of Wight NHS ICB. There's always going to be, I think, a certain amount of debate about that figure. Whatever the figure is, even if it's £2.50, there are better ways of commissioning services. We have, and I know that the Alliance, I know that the leader and that the MPs have had dialogue and are continuing to do so. But I think this is really essentially signalling Council's desire to move forward slightly more robustly if things do not change, because it's a matter of time. We talk and nothing happens, and inequality is plaguing the islands. We could take this, say, to government, because I think it does engage equality issues, but why should we? The council is responsible for so much, as Chair and has eloquently said on many occasions. adult social care, children's social care. These are the things which are taxing the council massively. The ICB simply needs to provide the services. If they're not able to do that, there are methods and pathways, and those have cost implications. But those cost implications shouldn't be shouldered by the Isle of Wight Council. They should be firmly with the ICB, and it is for them to advocate for the tools that they potentially need. So, you know, if you, well, I'll bring it to a conclusion there, but I simply would say that this is an important underlining of essentially the direction of this council. Thank you.
Now, thank you very much. Now, I just need to bring to your attention that we have 1 hour in which we are allowed to debate motions, and we are actually approaching that end. And we've got how many minutes? 10, just under 10 minutes. Now, I'm assuming that you would really want to do a vote on this. So we can take a few questions, and then we need a seconder, obviously, which I see Councillor Nicholson has seconded that. But we've only got time literally for a couple of, because I do want to get this important motion voted on. Okay, so I'm going to go to the list, if that's okay. Councillor Jarman that was there first.
My apologies, Chair, and to the council. I was not aware of the depths to which Councillor Drew's discussion would take us. I have to declare a pecuniary interest in a venture which is involved in this, which has started very recently. It is subject to commercial confidentiality. I'm not able to discuss it at this time. I think others here may be involved in it as well, and I will have to remove myself from the chamber for it.
Okay, thank you. If anybody else needs to do that, can they please do that now?
Chair, with your indulgence, I'd like to check a point of order with the monitoring officer in relation to resolution 4.
Order, so that has to be discussed. Monitoring officer.
It's just Councillor Drew says that this is cost neutral, but committing to taking legal action, I'm not comfortable with that. And also, if there would certainly be a financial element to that, which cannot be imposed on full council. That would be a cabinet decision. So I would respectfully ask that point 4 be removed.
Okay, just give me a second. Councillor Drew, would you like to make an amendment there at all?
If I may, very quickly, I inserted the if necessary intentionally to avoid that potential issue. I would say that from my own perspective, it is necessary. But what I'm suggesting is that we are essentially highlighting what council is minded to do. And I would suggest that actually the preparation of legal advice could be handled by our excellent in-house legal team. And we could then potentially move that forwards, and I would be happy to potentially bring that as another motion. But I do think it's fairly important to keep point 4 in. I am happy to take it out if it's felt that there is a cost implication. But
so if you could just second
the
monitoring officer. I'm mindful that I do want to get your motion voted on if possible.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Andre. Clearly, at this point in time, when we don't know what legal action would entail if it ever went to legal action, then it's difficult to quantify in the abstract that potential for legal action. So certainly under the Constitution, I think it's part 4A, section 10, I think it is, whereby if motions are deemed to potentially involve significant expenditure of the council.
Chairman, point of order. Can I make a suggestion that the wording is changed to commit to consider taking legal action, and then that then would presumably have the same effect and keep everybody happy.
Happy with that, Councillor?
Yeah, certainly.
Can we do that? Because otherwise we're just not going to get there. And I'm determined that we are going to vote on things. And where are we in time? Okay, so at 3 minutes, we're going to take a vote, right? Just I'm going to determine to be focused. Okay, so we've got Councillor Robertson, Councillor Lilley, you've got a minute each, and Councillor Jordan.
I don't need to speak. I've spoken on this elsewhere, but needless to say, I back the motion. There is a problem nationally, but that's no excuse not to deal with it locally and spend more of the money allocated to us. Currently, we only spend 50% of the money allocated to us. The ICB need to spend more, and I'm happy to. I've already met with them, and I'll be meeting with them again.
Thank you very much for your points, Councillor Lid. Really briefly.
I think it's important that to mention that the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Health and Social Care and previous chairs and vice chairs like Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Woodrow and myself have actually been fighting for this issue and having talks with the ICB continually. I think it's very important that we do need to listen to dentists, because a lot of our local NHS dentists actually have the ideas to actually improve, and they have not been listened to by the ICB continually. And it's really sad that in the last 3 months, we've lost 3 dentists of the NHS, partly because of travel, because they come over from the mainland, and the irregularity of ferries and hovercraft have meant that they've just left. So we do need to link this issue of the ferries and the travel and dentistry, because to get dentists over here, we actually need good ferry services.
Thank you. My point is along that with Councillor Andre. I'm unable to understand, even using in-house legal team, how that's cost neutral. It just isn't. It's the first thing. The second thing is we just had a proposal to change the wording. Let's do that properly if we're going to do that. So let's have an amendment and second it and vote upon it. And thirdly, for me, I would support this. And we spoke, the Health and Wellbeing Board is probably the place for this to be dealt with, as it has been and been presented by on dentistry specifically in the past, recently actually. But consider, commit, take legal action. I have no idea what legal action, what on earth, I'm struggling to understand what legal action this council can take against the ICB. Really struggling. So considering it, I don't know. I'd have to know. So I can't support that. And I can't support it because it has a cost implication, because this will, even if there is, somebody could explain to me right now what the legal opportunities are, we will be using external lawyers. So costs will be substantial. I'd suggest if you stick with this, this has to come to cabinet.
Okay, so thank you very much.
But Chair, for me, there's been a proposal to change the wording.
I'm going to deal with that. So you're proposing to change the wording?
Yeah, I'm happy to accept that.
Okay. Can we have a second on that proposal to change the wording? Michael Lilley. Can people vote for the change of wording, please? Those in favour? Okay. Those against? 1. Abstentions? 1. Okay. So so if we don't move to the vote now, we won't be able to do that. Okay. So are you giving ground?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Everybody, so we will move to the vote, because I'm determined that we will do the business. Okay. Those in favour of this motion, please show. Okay, counted. Those against? Sorry, I'm scratching my back. And those abstentions, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you very much. That motion is dealt with. We're just going to get Councillor Jarman in. I think it was right first time. So we now enter the final phase of tonight's meeting. 30 minutes of, and it's just 8 o'clock looking at this, 30 minutes of questions from members. We have one written question and several other questions. So we'll take the written question first because it's there, which I'm asking the monitoring officer if he will just read that.
Thank you, Chair. Reading this written question on behalf of the Chairman of the Council, the written question is addressed to Councillor Phil Jordan. The question reads as follows. What progress has been made in progressing the replacement of the floating bridge with 3S as stated in the full Council policy agreements earlier this year? What face-to-face meetings have taken place with 3S since April 2024? Please provide copies of the full council to the full council, the minutes of any and all meetings to this matter. Given that a significant time lapse has now occurred, please set out a proper time frame for the replacement of Floating Bridge 6. When can we expect to issue a procurement process, and when will you anticipate the build start date and delivery? Who is sitting on the procurement panel, and why have I, that's the chair, and Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox not being invited to attend and participate in the Floating Bridge Replacement Board process as was agreed? That ends the written question by the Chair of the Council to Councillor Phil Jordan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for reading that for me.
Thank you, Chair. Carl, thank you for the question. It's helpful because it gives us the opportunity to bring an update to this council. Just before I address that, I'd just like to say in brief that Cabinet resolved in 14th of March this year to replace current floating bridge. And utilising previous work, especially that of 3C, carried out recently, Cabinet agreed that this information should be used to inform the next stage to ensure the work is carried out as quickly and efficiently as possible. This includes working with the consultants 3S, who supported the recent floating bridge performance review. The scope of the 3S work is to be agreed between 3S, Cabinet and relevant officers. Progress is being made on the recommendations set out in the Cabinet report. This includes setting up a member board and other local stakeholder meetings once sufficient information is available for a meaningful consultation. Now, we will provide a written response to Councillor Love. It is here. He has it. It's 5 pages long, and for that reason, it will be circulated to all members after this meeting or at latest tomorrow morning, depending on the ability of our office to get that out. But that written response, 5 pages, quite detailed information that addresses the question, which I hope is a full response, is helpful to me, to you, and to all the members of this council, and to the public looking in to understand what's happening. I hope that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for that, and I'll look forward to reading that afterwards, as will everybody else. So we now have quite a lot of questions. Oh, sorry, Karen Luciani.
Thank you, Chair. So we've spoken a lot about inadequate, forgotten the word, but can the leader, along with the MPs who I've actually spoken to about this, ask DEFRA to extend the timeline for the personal flood defence grants? Residents are having a real issue with getting quotes and work done. Being on the island, they're real disadvantage. I'm told there's a 48-page thing of rules as well. So, you know, these timelines are coming I think, at the end of October. So it's a real worry. And if they don't get the work done, they will lose their £800 that they did for the survey. I'm really, you know, the equality, that's what I was thinking of. The equality here is it goes in line with the ferries. I mean, I'm talking about my ward in particular because there was over 100 properties and 20 businesses, but this is actually an island-wide issue. And so if my residents are finding it hard to get this done, then there is a lot of other people on the Isle of Wight, and that I am an Isle of Wight councillor, so I have to speak on their behalf as well. We just have to, would you do that, please? Would you speak to the MPs and get that timeline extended?
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you, Karen. Absolutely understand the concerns. I know Joe has it. I know numbers of members have this in this chamber. It's a great concern to all of us. And what we will commit to do, Karen, for you and for all of those members affected, certainly talk to Joe still here, Richard's gone, but talk to both MPs to assist us in this, and we will commit to approaching DEFRA potentially through the officer level contacts that we have. If it requires to see if we can get that extended. If it requires our political input, of course, we'll commit to doing that too. But I think the first stage is talk to Joe and Richard, ask our chief exec to reach out through the officer level, and if it requires political with a small p input after that, then we'll commit to doing that. I hope that's helpful, Karen.
Thank you very much. I have spoken to both MPs, so they're really aware of what the issues are. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. And Councillor Stewart next.
Councillor Jordan, could we just confirm what is happening about the speed review, please?
The speed review is due this autumn. It's been delayed massively. I know every time you ask me, I say it's been delayed. It has been delayed. I am sorry to tell you that it's been delayed. There are circumstances within our highways team that have dictated that delay. Some staff leave, key staff on the review leaving. We've had a fair bit of illness, and over some we've had some holidays. I am promised, but I won't make that promise because I've been promised. So I will say to you, in the knowledge that I've been promised, a report to Cabinet is due to come this autumn. So that would be in October or November. That's the current position. I can't promise that that's going to happen, but that's what my information is. I can only apologise to all of you. I know how important this also is to many members here who suffer from excess speeding particularly in their villages and towns, and the review will help us to start addressing that.
Thank you very much for that response. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of issues with questions, if I could do them separately, if that would be okay. First of all, I'd like to apologise that this is something that isn't in my ward. It's in another member's ward, but it directly has had an effect on a resident of my own ward. It's something I brought up previously, and it relates to the huge accident that happened at Vittlefields Cross on Forest Road a few years ago. It's now 5.5 years after the devastating fatal crash, more than 5 years after assurances were given to signatories of a 7,000 name petition calling for action, and 3.5 years since the Isle of Wight coroner asked the Isle of Wight Council to take measures to prevent further loss of life at Vittlefields Cross. The questions I really have is why, after all this time, has substantial safety work not been undertaken at Vittlefields? Does the council plan to undertake any substantial safety work at this junction? And if so, what works and when? And does the council consider it as complied with the wishes of the HM coroner? I've read the whole coroner's report. Some of it's quite hard to to read, obviously. But there's one particular thing which just one excerpt. I can give this to you in writing, Councillor Jordan. But it says, whilst I am aware that some measures have taken place and improvements by the Isle of Wight Council at this junction, I am concerned that these measures do not go far enough to make this junction significantly safer for all road users in the future and could prevent the future loss of life. So that's my first question. I understand there's quite a few points to that, but I just wondered if you could give me an update on where we are with that, please.
We can't take lots of questions because lots of people have got their names down, but we can certainly try and have a response to that.
Let me help, Chair, in the sense that I think this is such a serious a set of circumstances that I will get you a written reply, Matt. That's not to avoid discussion. I just think it's serious enough for me to make sure that I give you and this chamber the exact correct information. As you refer to, there's been some approaches there and there are some issues to be resolved with land ownership. But I will get you ASAP. I can't, probably within 7 days. A written reply, Matt, addressing all of those questions. And thank you for them, because it is an important issue.
And to be circulated to all members, is that appropriate? Yeah. Yeah. Certainly.
The second question will probably just get a yes or no answer. It'll be very simple, honestly.
Go on then.
Quick. If any services currently provided by the Isle of Wight Council that are provided in Newport and Carisbrooke are proposed to be cut or reduced by the next budget, could the Isle of Wight Council and its Cabinet please ensure that Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council are informed as early as possible so that we may be considered and we can consider this within our budget so we can either help to take over services or contribute towards retaining them. Thank you.
I understand those frustrations as a local town councillor also. The timings are out, aren't they, for us? We start our budget process now, in earnest now, although of course we've been working on that, but we don't set it till next February, and it's not until around third week in December that we know what our settlement is. I think that may be coming early this year. And that feeds into us being able to present to full council in February a balanced budget. So that's for the Isle of Wight Council, and that's very difficult when you in Newport and Ryde and other councils are trying to do this in October, for example. So the commitment is, I'm not sure how I can twist that so that the town councils have the detail of information, other than to say we will get that as quickly as we can to you. But it is a moving feast with the budget, and as you'll come to realise, we are again this year under some budget pressures, particularly on overspends in social care, children's and adults. But that's all to be dealt with. Matt, I know it's a bit of a waffled answer, but I understand the frustrations for you because we have them in the town council that I'm a member of, and it's not an easy answer. But we'll engage with you. We'll engage with you. And we do engage, Cabinet do engage with IWALC every month, by the way. So we do have representatives come into Cabinet and do ask questions. We have an hour with them every single month. And I know there's a lot of information gets passed. That's not quite the question that you're asking me, but we are trying to get that information out as quickly and easy as we can.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Thank you, Chair. So the government has removed the winter fuel payment for around 35,000 island pensioners, some living on as little as 13,000 a year. My question to the council leader is, will he ask the appropriate officer, possibly the chief executive, to talk to the Isle of Wight Council's partners and consider making some contingency plans to support pensioners who may really struggle through the winter And I'm thinking of things like warm spaces. Would he ask the chief executive to talk to partners and consider contingencies?
Thanks, Joe. Discussion we've had in Cabinet informally, already agreed that we should be using those partners. So I absolutely take that question away and try and get that delivered through our partners. We've looked at a number of those partners in Newport, Pan Together, for example. I know Ryde are trying to do this, but Joe, absolutely right. Let's see what we can do in this difficult circumstances for our elderly population and pensioners. Thanks for raising it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Nearly 12 months on from the original flood incidents of last winter, and to my knowledge, none of the relevant S19 reports are still published. We're told that these reports are critical to addressing flood risk, but landing just as we enter the wettest months of the year with no recommendations having been able to be actioned is hugely concerning. This issue is, I'm told, being covered in neighbourhoods and regen scrutiny in January as per my request. But in the meantime, can the council please confirm published dates for all outstanding S19 reports and also commit to engaging with the newly affiliated flood group in Gunville regarding delivery of recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that to you again?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Pushing to get the draft into fully completed so that can be circulated. And of course, we'll commit to seeing how we deliver that through a complex situation, as you well know, and others that have suffered flooding with multi-agency input. And in your case, I think private land ownership as well. So these are complex issues, but Joe, commit to trying to get you some relief for your residents there, as we have, will commit to for others, for Karen and others that have suffered flooding in their wards.
Thank you very much. With 2 questions left. Councillor Lilley. Oh, 3 questions left. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a question about Ryde Arena, but I was actually shocked by the figure that Ashley Whitaker brought up about children in care being the figure that I think was, I picked up 292, but it was around that figure. Being that you just mentioned about the budget and tightness, if a child comes into care, that costs a significant amount of money. And if you've got 222, I could reckon that could be about 30 million plus, which actually we have to pay. We can't not pay that, right? That's a statutory thing. It's something for the last 8 years as a councillor I brought up, that this is a running tab. So my question is the figure going up of children in care? And if it is, right, what action are we taking to it? Because other authorities have actually gone bust because of this issue, right? And therefore, that's why I moved my question from Ryde Arena to actually this very critical issue that we as councillors really need to know, especially as corporate parents.
Is that a response that we can give at the moment? Is that a response we can give? Can we give a response to that, or is that a written response?
Chairman, that question should go to the Children's Services Scrutiny Committee. It shouldn't be come to this committee. It's unfair for leaders to answer that question. That should come
If only I could, Paul.
Yeah, that should come.
Order.
Okay. Fair question, because it was mentioned tonight, Councillor.
So unusually, the Director of Children's Services, if I'm happy to ask him to comment on that specifically, is the number going up or is it constant? If you're happy with that, but I take your point, Paul, entirely. Ashley, is that something you'd be prepared just briefly to comment on?
Thank you. The number is relatively static.
The numbers actually in the paper that was presented at the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Children's Services, Education and Skills on the 4th of September. And it compared it with the number from the previous period. So if I talk a little bit slower, I reckon I'll be able to find it. And the council was caring for 277 children at the end of Q1. So that was at the end of June, which was a decrease from 285 at the end of Q4. So it has decreased slightly from that number. But the number, if you look at it over a longer period, from memory, say 12 months ago, it was around just under 300. So we have seen a modest decline. But it'd be useful for members to know that if you compare the numbers of children in care as a proportion of the total child cohort, we're about in the top 10% in the country, i.e. it's a relatively high number. And what we are going to be looking to do over the coming months and years is to work more proactively with our families on the island to deliver help as early as we can so that less children have to come into care. But at the moment, it's a high level relative to the size of the total population.
So I thank you for your response. We are going to refer this to Children's Scrutiny as well. And I think that that's where it needs to go at this particular point.
So just like, it's highly unusual for me to ask an officer, you know this, you know the protocol. So, but I do appreciate that. And that's that was done in the spirit of trying to give you an answer to a genuine question rather than a written response, which is what would have happened. So you now all know that. And I just bear with me. That is an unusual thing for us to do, to ask officers to comment on members' questions.
I think it's important that we get the questions, we get the answers where we can, and then we refer on, and we will always give that opportunity if it's appropriate and it feels right. We have, I'm just trying to get the last two questions in because we haven't got very long. Councillor Spence.
Thank you, Chair. I anticipate probably a written answer to this, so it might be quite quick. Many residents are concerned that affordable housing on the island is not actually affordable by those on the housing register. So my question is, how many so-called affordable homes have been built on the island in the last 12 months? And how many of those have been allocated to islanders on the housing register?
You're right, I don't have those numbers in my head, Councillor Spink. Interesting question. I'd like to know the answer myself. And I will get you that information and we will write it and we'll circulate that also. Yeah.
Have we got a time scale, 7 days or as soon as possible?
We have that information to hand. I just don't have it to hand.
Okay, so we'll get it to you all as soon as possible.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on the former Camp Hill prison site, which is in my ward, of course. It is an issue I have written to the new Secretary of State about to try and get some clarification. And I took the opportunity to nobble our new MP here on the West, Councillor Quigley MP, because I have previously emailed him about it. He's going to be taking that up. But what I'd like to know, Leader, have you recently had any engagement with government ministers around the future of the former Camp Hill prison site and Ministry of Justice lands there? And whether or not you have, will you be taking opportunities to press the government to finally make a decision as what it's going to do with that estate, particularly as it has been identified in our draft local plan?
Thank you, Andrew. We haven't had the opportunity to talk to government on this specific. I haven't anyway. It's because it's a new government. It would be certainly something that we should do. And through Councillor Quigley, perhaps Joe, I'm not sure. I know it's Councillor Quigley's side of the island. We should make those representations, Andrew, and find out. So with the new government, let's try again to get some resolution to this.
So thank you very much for that question. It's also a question that I asked Councillor Quigley recently in relation to releasing land for housing, etc. and possible. So we're all on the same page. So that is the last question that I can see that's been raised. So I'm not going to give any more opportunity to ask any more questions at this time of night now, as it's now 8:25. And just want to say thank you for some really good debates tonight, and have a safe journey home, and let's hope that everybody's recovered and back for the next meeting. Thank you.